My name is Lars Clemenson. I'm the superintendent of schools of the Hampton Bays School District, and it's my opportunity to welcome you here tonight. I'm sorry we're all here, but we're all here for an important reason. We're here because we've been brought to this room by many different places and for many different reasons. And our goal in the Southampton Town Opioid Task Force is to leave together as a community, learning something new tonight, offering a perspective that others might not have, and helping the town of Southampton develop an action plan of next steps to address the opioid epidemic on Long Island, but specifically in our own community. I want to welcome you here on behalf of Board of Education President Kevin Springer, Vice President Rich Joslin, Trustee Liz Scully, and Trustees Doc Capuano and Mike Dunn. As we know, the opioid epidemic cuts across all demographics. It doesn't know class, it doesn't know race, it doesn't know ethnicity or geography. And the panel that Supervisor Schneiderman and the town board have put together represent many, many diverse places in our community. We represent education, of course, in the school district. We know that the opioid epidemic is a manifestation of other issues, of gateway issues and behaviors and challenges that our kids face. I'm here tonight to learn about the perspectives that I don't have experience with, and I hope you all are as well. This will be filmed on Channel 20. This is being live streamed right now on YouTube, and we hope folks are at home watching, and also will run on CTV Channel 22 in the days and weeks to come. Our exits are located here on the stage and in the back, and restrooms and a water fountain are out the doors and to the right. I thank you again for being here. Please help me recognize and welcome our co-chairs of the Opioid Task Force in Southampton Town, Drew Scott and Town Supervisor Jay Schneiderman.
All right. Thank you to Superintendent Clemenson and to the Hampton Bays School for hosting this community forum. This is obviously an issue that affects the school, but affects the entire community. Today, we have the community coming together to address this crisis, to try to find some solutions, to hear how the opioid epidemic is affecting our lives personally. And I'm sure we'll hear many stories this evening. I would ask that you turn your cell phone ringers off, if you would, so we don't interrupt tonight's presentations. We also have translation available too. If you're a non-English speaker, or if you prefer to hear in Spanish, we have some headsets here. We will be live translating throughout the night. So we're calling this It Hits Home. It's a public forum on the opioid epidemic. It's not just a local issue. This is affecting our country with roughly 142 deaths every single day in America. Roughly in Suffolk County, and these numbers aren't precise, but roughly one a day in Suffolk County. And in the town of Southampton, with its roughly 60,000 people, we have been experiencing one a month. One person from our community being snatched from us through this terrible crisis of opioid addiction. And our job is to prevent the next one, to figure out a way to stop this from happening. And I have faith in this community that by coming together, we will help identify the next possible victim and get to them before heroin or fentanyl or Oxycontin does. So we have a tough task ahead of us, but we have some really great people who are put together to address this issue, and it starts here. It starts here. We have a great task force. I have to say, when we have seen our numbers going up alarmingly, and part of it is, fentanyl, which is so lethal, is more available. Heroin seems to be more available. But 2 years ago, there was barely any overdoses, any fatalities. Then there were 5 deaths in that 2 years ago within our community. In the past year, 17 fatalities, 17. It more than tripled, And, we hear about it on the news. Sometimes we hear, we watch News 12 and we see. One of those recent deaths was actually the granddaughter of Drew Scott, a News 12 reporter. Drew is to my left. He has been a trusted voice in this community for so many years. And I saw Drew only a few days after Hallie Ray was found dead, and he was devastated and said, you know, Jay, I want to do something. I want to make a difference. I want to dedicate myself to changing things. And I said, you know, Drew, I want to work on this issue too. You know, think of all the issues that the town works on. I can't think of anything more important. This is life or death to so many people. It's not just young people. It's not rich or poor. It's the entire community, east, west, north, south, rich, poor. This is affecting the entire community. So I said to Drew, you know, let's work together. Let's see if we can develop some solutions, an action plan. Let's see if we can put together a task force. And Drew is right here. He has stepped up and he has agreed to co-chair, and I'm proud at this point to introduce Drew Scott.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jay. That's a picture of Hallie Ray, my granddaughter. She was 22, a twin, beautiful girl. I keep making the mistake of saying I'm glad to be here. I'm not really glad to be here with you tonight, but I'm honored to be with you tonight because we want to do something about this terrible epidemic. If people admitted that this was an epidemic across the board, I think we'd be making headway. But right now, more than we know are sweeping it under the rug. So there's a stigma attached with heroin overdoses and deaths. And what I'm trying to do is say, look, it happened to me. It can happen to you, your children, your loved ones. Please, let's bring this out in the open and let's find solutions. That's why so many of our task force members are here tonight. The task force are seated there at our tables. One of the task force members is my daughter, who lost her daughter, Hallie, and she's keeping busy. Sally, she's right there, just waved everybody. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate so many of you coming up to me and telling me your stories about how you've lost young people. And I'm so sorry for your loss too. So what we want to do is join forces and do something about this, Jay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have tonight with us, you know, most about tonight is to listen to your stories. This is, so some of the people who are advising the town board through our task force can hear your stories, but we did want to offer a few presentations as well tonight. But most of the evening will be us listening to what you have to say. We have invited a panel of experts to help us answer some of the questions. Dr. Jeff Reynolds, President and CEO of Family Children's Association, and you will hear from Jeff in a little while. Dr. Sean Cannon is the Chief Academic Officer at Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. Kim Laube, who's the Executive Director of HUGS, which stands for Human Understanding Growth Services. This is out of West Hampton. It's a resource group. Kim will be offering some remarks as well, along with Linda Ventura. She's a family advocate who lost her son to addiction. Karen Martin, she's with Alternatives, a resource group for recovery. She works with a lot of the schools. Jessica Lennon from Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, from the emergency. She's an emergency room nurse. She has seen many overdose patients. Dr. James Tamarkin, he's the Commissioner of the Suffolk County Health Department. He is here to listen as well and be a resource. Anne Marie Sorney, Suffolk County Health Department, Director of Mental Health Hygiene Services. Chief Stephen Skrzynecki, Southampton Police Department. He'll also be offering a little bit of the law enforcement perspective. And we have more than a dozen help groups in a lobby that have resources to help. So on your way out, if you haven't already picked up some of the brochures, make sure you do that. Among them, we have Catholic Charities, Narcotics Anonymous, HUGS, Alternatives, Stepping Stones, Oasis, LICR, Thrive, FIST, Phoenix House, and Seafield. We also have many invited guests. There are several town board members here. I saw Councilwoman Lofstad is here, Councilman Bouvier, Councilman Glinka. I know Councilwoman Scalera was not able to attend but she had hoped to come tonight, was unable. Assemblyman Fred Thiel is here. Legislator Bridget Fleming is here. So we have a host of elected officials who are here. We have a representative from Lee Zeldin's office, Belinda Groneman. We have Kerry Ann Soto from Suffolk Police Commissioner Tim Sinney's office. Carrie Besserman from Suffolk County Health Services, Deputy Director. Minerva Perez from OLA. Father Constantine Lazarakis from the Greek Orthodox Church. Pastor Doug Kinney is here as well.
All right, let's get started. Our guest speaker, our keynote speaker tonight is Dr. Jeff Reynolds. He's the president and CEO of Family and Children's Association. He's a member of the Governor Cuomo's Heroin and Opioid Task Force. Please welcome Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Jay. And thank you to the task force members for agreeing to serve. You know, we've had a number of task forces set up to deal with this issue, and each one produces recommendations, and then in a lot of cases, quite frankly, nothing happens. So I'm glad that there are elected officials in the room, and it seems like there's a high degree of motivation to actually get some things done. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I basically put it together because it makes organizers of these kinds of things feel like maybe you're prepared. But I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of slides tonight. In fact, I'm going to avoid that. Is that okay? Or are you dying to see my slides? So here's what I'd like you to do. All right, because part of what we want to do is frame this conversation in the right way. Take a look around the room. If you're seated in the front, take a look at the back, but just scan the room for 1 second. There are probably 250 people in this room. By the end of 2017, 5 weeks from now, twice as many will have died since January 1st of overdoses. Twice as many. Fill this room twice. And those are the sons, the daughters, the cousins, the moms, the dads, the grandparents, our coworkers who are no longer with us. And if you began to think about the number of lives that each of those people touched, the amount of loss and the amount of devastation, the numbers get bigger. Here's the thing. It doesn't need to be this way. We're talking about something that is preventable. We're talking about a disease that's treatable. And despite the way we're feeling right now in a lot of cases, recovery is absolutely possible. I didn't start with the numbers of people who found a path to recovery. I started with the fatalities, because that's what's first and foremost in our mind. But it's equally as important to understand that there are success stories. There's a few very, very specific things this community and other communities can do to have more of those success stories. I will tell you that there's no one answer. There is no magic bullet. There's nobody who can stand here, nobody on your panel who can say, if only we do this, it'll all stop. But there's a whole bunch of things that we can do to make progress. This problem is not new for Long Island. We all talk about it as being a new crisis. We all talk about the new epidemic. It's not new. The New York Times ran a cover story 15 years ago about heroin in suburbia and featured a family from Long Island on the front page. We had the Medford pharmacy shootings back in 2012. We talked about prescription opioids, and then we talked about heroin, and now we're talking about fentanyl, and tomorrow it will be something else. But we're still missing the boat when it comes to prevention. We still have school districts who believe that assemblies this size actually help accomplish something. We still have school districts island-wide, and I'm not talking about this one, who believe that we should start these conversations as kids transition into middle school. It's never too late, but talk about a missed opportunity. The reality is that every single school across this nation ought to be using evidence-based programs that are backed by science and data, that start in kindergarten, that don't end until that kid walks out of high school, because we know that the messages that our kids get in many, many ways are conflicting. The messages they get from their parents are sometimes conflicting. The messages they get from our community are sometimes conflicting. When I get together with parents, I say they're your kids. You have them for more time than anybody else. You have more influence than anybody else. Try using it. You're not their friends. When I go to school districts, I always say you have those kids for 8 hours per day. You have a golden opportunity not to separate out drug and alcohol education, but to integrate it into every single component of the school day. As long as we continue to segregate it out and celebrate Red Ribbon Week and forget about the problem for the other time that kids are in school, we're missing the boat when it comes to prevention. When we think about treatment, and it's a natural place to go because we know that substance use disorders are treatable. The problem in a lot of cases is that people get to treatment very, very late in the game. Insurance companies will tell them you need to fail first at outpatient treatment before they'll pay for inpatient treatment. The average length of stay right now for an inpatient, for someone that goes inpatient, is about 8.5 days. Imagine you're using substances from the age of 15 until the age of 19. You finally find a way into treatment and somebody tells you we're only going to pay for 8 days and you're back out on the street. And then we blame that person when they begin using substances again. The reality is that in a lot of cases, it can take up to 10 days to get somebody into treatment here on Long Island. That's unacceptable. We won't solve this problem until we have treatment on demand for everyone. At the same time, we have to stop segregating out mental health issues, because we know, as we talk to young people, they will say, I didn't use to get high. I used to feel normal. And so often young people go to treatment stand after treatment stand and come home and they relapse very quickly. And the parents say, I spent a whole bunch of money. It didn't do any good. Because a substance use disorder is the symptom of a much larger problem. And very often parents who are reluctant to saddle their kid with a psychiatric diagnosis say it's just a phase. It's not just a phase. And at the same time as we talk about heroin, and that's what gets everybody into a big room, and we talk about fentanyl and the fact that EMS workers can actually suffer consequences in resuscitating folks, this all begins with alcohol and marijuana. So many parents will say, thank God they're not doing the hard stuff. And by the way, alcohol still kills more people in this country than heroin does. This year and last year. We talk about marijuana not only being somehow less harmful than it was in the past, we talk about it as being potentially beneficial for you, which sends a mixed message to our kids. As there's a discussion about legalizing marijuana, and believe me, I'm not in favor of locking people up for a dime bag either. But as we debate legalization, it's sending a message to our kids that marijuana and alcohol use is less serious than anything else, and it's okay to do. So many of those kids do that thing and then realize, well, it was the only time where I fit in. It's the only time I felt normal. And as their use escalates, somebody taps them on the shoulder and says, did you ever try Vicodin? And then they use Vicodin, and then someone taps them on the shoulder and says, hey, guess what? Heroin is about a quarter of the price. You now have a 5-pill-a-day habit. You have no way to finance it, but heroin is only $10, and you're off to the races. And so treatment on demand needs to become a reality. We also need to make sure that we're addressing the needs of populations that have long been ignored before heroin ever arrived on the scene. It is almost impossible to find a bed for a woman who has children. It shouldn't be that way. Addiction is nothing new. We still have a system that's designed almost exclusively for single white men. It's not working really well. As we think about recovery, and that's kind of the end piece for a lot of folks as we talk about this, we have to have a conversation about relapse. How many of you know somebody who had a significant amount of time in recovery and relapsed once or twice and died of an overdose? It happens all the time. It happens all the time. And the lesson in all of this is that this is a chronic condition, that getting somebody some time in recovery is worth its weight in gold. And those of you who have experienced that miracle and subsequently lost a loved one know how important a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks is. But we've got to change the way we think about this thing. It used to be that if you relapsed, treatment was a failure. That's not necessarily the case. We know that for many people, this is a lifelong condition. Our goal needs to be to keep them safe during those relapses. And let me tell you, nobody should be leaving treatment. Nobody should be leaving the Suffolk County Jail. Nobody should be leaving a pharmacy with an opioid prescription without a handful of Narcan at the same time. And as we're talking about Narcan, here's what I'll say. There's a number of folks who have said, well, kids these days are having Narcan parties and they're using more heroin as a result of Narcan. It doesn't work that way. You know how we all tried to scare people about the Skittles parties where kids put pills into bowls and then took them out? It was an urban myth. It never happened. Now we've got folks who are saying kids are using more heroin because of the availability of Narcan. I wish addiction was that rational. It doesn't work that way. Young people are using heroin together with Narcan set in the center of the table because that's what we told them to do. We said, don't use alone. I want you to go to treatment. I want you to get well. But in the meantime, I want to give you the tools to stay alive. So don't use alone. And if you're going to use, make sure you have Narcan within reach, because you just might live long enough to darken the door of a treatment facility. And so we've got to rethink the way we address relapse. And then finally, when we think about recovery, this is where I think we probably have the furthest to go. What we're trying to do is really to create a recovery community, and we've made some great strides. So in March of this year, we opened the very first recovery center on Hop Hog. And when I say we, it was not only my organization, but 3 other organizations that came together and said, we could do something really cool. Long Island should have had a recovery center 30 years ago. It took us until March of 2017 to open one. But we've got one. Long Island probably needs 25 of them. And so as we talk with the local school districts about implementing evidence-based curriculum, as we talk about the need for increased treatment slots and insurance reform, and let us congratulate the good guys providing treatment, like Seafield and the Long Island Center for Recovery, we also need to advocate, particularly here on the East End, for a recovery center for young people who are trying to get their lives back on track. We do a really good job of talking with young people about how to take drugs out of their lives. We do a lousy job giving them stuff to refill that space with. We've got to deal with this in a holistic kind of way. We're one of the only major metropolitan areas without a recovery high school. I think all schools should be a recovery high school, including those on the East End, but they're not. And for some kids, an environment where your recovery comes first above all else and academics is somewhere down the line is what will make the difference between them succeeding and dying of an overdose. That's a short list of things that I think the group could do. What I would tell you is that every body I've been a part of has produced a list of recommendations. Things like sober home regulation, right? There are dozens of sober homes out here that are anything but, that are putting people at risk. We're talking about street-based diversion programs to change the way law enforcement looks at this and to bridge what used to be a big gap between treatment and law enforcement. Guess what? That gap doesn't exist anymore. We're working together and we're on the same page. The crisis has brought people together, but if we want to go the next step, we need to do more. I've often said every elected official, everyone from both parties, all levels, have said, this is a public health emergency. It's a crisis. We're not acting like it. We're not acting like it, and that's why folks are continuing to die. And here's my fear. I only had 10 minutes, so I got to wrap up quick. I see Jay has a gavel. Here's the thing. Another drug is going to come along. We're talking about fentanyl now. Something else will happen. We better make sure that we're prepared the next time around. That's not necessarily going to happen via your brilliant recommendations or more funding or things our elected officials do. All of those things are really, really important. This is really a person-to-person endeavor. You solve public health crises, particularly ones that carry a stigma, by people reaching out to people. By those of you who know someone who is struggling, being willing to go to that person again and again and again and offer them help. It comes from looking at our own behaviors. Are there things that we're doing unintentionally to either foster stigma or promote substance use? Are we holding our institutions and our schools, and quite frankly, our families accountable? Are we practicing what we preach in our own homes? That's what's going to help us see an end to this crisis. It's all of us connecting with each other. It's all of us working together. You know, what you didn't hear in my bio is that 25 years ago, I worked in AIDS. And it's very similar in a lot of ways in that we saw a very young population dying very, very quickly. And we saw government in action, and a lot of us looked and said, how could this be happening? And back then, we wore pins that said silence equals death. And we all said, never again can this happen. Never again can we watch an entire generation wither before our very eyes from something that's preventable and treatable. We're doing it again. We're making some of those same mistakes. But this is our opportunity to turn that around. The AIDS crisis is not what it was before. It took us 40 years to get from point A to point B, where we actually bent that curve, and there were 0 HIV-positive babies born in New York State last year. We can do the same thing here. We can stand here, I'd love to come back, in 1 year and say, so we dropped those deaths from 500, we cut them by 50% to 250, and then we come back the next year and say, guess what? There were no overdose fatalities on Long Island. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine what that would mean to the families who have lost loved ones. Imagine what it would mean to our kids and our grandkids. We can make that happen, and you guys are all part of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Very sobering information. Our next speaker is a woman who knows the grips of addiction and the rewards of recovery. And I want you to welcome Kim Laube. She's the Executive Director of HUGS. Please welcome Kim Laube.
Awesome. I have this amazing job where I get to travel the country and have a conversation about drugs and alcohol. And what's really fun for me tonight is I am in my home area, in my hometown, and I know many of you in the room. And I love the fact that we're coming together and having this conversation that's been taking place. And I want to really talk very specifically about some things that we can begin to do. See, the HUGS organization has been around for 35 years, and we've been having this conversation for 35 years. I don't stand here today for any other reason other than I had to say these words. Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm never going to do that again, Your Honor. I promise. And see, my mom was smart enough when I was 16 years old to put me on what was called a PINS petition, and I was a person in need of supervision. Make no mistake, I still am. I'm just a little bit more grown up now. And when she did that, it opened me up to a network of support. And it was actually the community that raised me. There was a community that came together. Most specifically, it was this program out on Shelter Island, the same program that I run today, which is a leadership program, a drug and alcohol prevention program. It's a program that helps begin to give voice to this conversation and not just talk about drugs and alcohol, but get to all of the issues that young people are dealing with and facing with. And I think I was so fortunate that I had the opportunity because of the judge, because I had to do community service, because of my mom, because of somebody who worked in my school suggested I go out to Shelter Island. And it was life-changing for me. And all of the programs that HUGS runs is really to support exactly that. To not only have meaningful conversations with young people, but to have meaningful conversations with adults. To bring community members. Because check this out, kids know drugs are bad. They know it. And if it was just a matter of educating them that, we've done our job. But what we have to do is take that conversation just a little bit further. So my program aims to do exactly that, to inspire and to empower and to get young people part of the question. I told you I speak to about 25,000 people a year. I start the same way, and if you heard me speak, you know I'm going to do it. I'm going to count to 3. After I say the number 3, I want you guys to clap once. I'm counting to 3. After I say 3, clap once. Eyes up here, hands up here. Hands up here. Ladies and gentlemen, 1, 2, 3. So I'll count to 3. After I say 3, I want you guys to clap once. It's that simple. Eyes up here. I got you again. I get you every time. Ladies and gentlemen, 1, 2, 3. 3. Clap now. Awesome. So I use that because it's never going to be about what we say to kids. It's going to be about what we show kids. And our behavior on the East End sometimes includes a tremendous amount of partying with alcohol. We boat with it. We barbecue with it. We celebrate it. We work in the industry. We put it up on Facebook when we have our cute little pedicure toes looking at the beach with our drink in our hand. And I have to say, as we continue to make that stuff seem like it's a non-issue, we're continuously feeding that and showing that to our young people. So that is a simple test to just remind us that it's never going to be about what we say. See, we have no street cred with kids. When we talk to them about drugs and alcohol and we make it sound like they're going to be walking down the street one day, there's going to be some big bad dude. He always has a hood on. He's going to hold them down, pry open their mouth, and force them to drink. Because the first person who's going to introduce drugs and alcohol to them isn't some big scary dude. It's going to be their friends, the people they go to, they hang out with every day, the ones that they took baseball with or that they took dance lessons with. And by the way, the first person to give alcohol to your kids or let your kids drink a drug is not going to be some big scary dude. It's going to be your neighborhood mom, who we've done a brilliant job of teaching kids not to drink and drive. And now I want to bring that conversation to not drink, because this whole conversation is not about where addiction ends. It must shift to where addiction begins. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to start with heroin first off. It's not the way this conversation happens. And if you talk to anybody in recovery, and there's a bunch of awesome folks in recovery in this room, they're going to tell you they didn't pick up at the end stage, that it started very innocently early on. And we've had this conversation for quite some time, and it's time that we begin to shift it and we begin to all rally together, because these are all of our kids on the East End. And I don't care if you're Bridgehampton, West Hampton, Southampton, these are all of our kids. And it is time that we shift the conversation and take it to a different level and stop blaming the schools and stop blaming this group or that group, but we all must come together and have the conversation the same exact way that this task force is. And I encourage you to get involved in that conversation. I'm fortunate enough to be sober for 28 years. And I share that, thank you. You know, just real quick, this is one of the few rooms I give presentations and people don't know when to clap or not, right? But if I told you I was a survivor of cancer, you would be throwing pink stuff up here all day long. So thank you for clapping. I do want to let you know that people can and do recover. And sometimes people can be engaged in a process where they can begin to not only get sober, but find their value and then be able to give back to the community, the same as so many people in this room are. I hate everything about the opiate epidemic, hate everything about it, except for we're listening just a little bit different today. And that's the only thing that I could say that I give hope for. Along this journey, I've met some incredible recovery warriors, incredible human beings. But right now, I'm going to introduce you to one of the most special ones of all.
Hi, I'm Tom Ventura. I was born on March 28, 1990 in Baldwin, New York. My family moved to Kings Park in '93. I have an older sister named Jennifer and a little brother named Andrew. I went to Abiding Presence Nursery School and made friends there that I've kept all through high school. I always loved to be outside, fish at the bluff at Old Dock Road, build forts, and play all kinds of Army games with the kids in my neighborhood. My family and I went camping every summer at Hither Hill State Park in Montauk. I played Kings Park youth football, wrestling, and lacrosse. My favorite sport is lacrosse, and I am a really good goalie and was MVP of my team as a freshman. My friends and I went paintballing in the woods off of Meadow Road. I love pizza from Shortstop, sandwiches from Anderson's Deli, and Slurpees from 7-Eleven. I always loved to tease my sister, and I tricked her into eating worms on more than one occasion. I was so happy when my brother was born so he could help me tease Jen. I love to have Andrew follow me around so I could teach him important things, like peeing on the back fence. I love my family. I was really close with my Mima and Poppy. As a family, we would have a big dinner every Sunday afternoon after everyone's games. My Mima would take one of us to sleep over every week. I love those sleepovers. My Mima died in 2002 from cancer, and she wasn't supposed to die so quick. I was so sad that my poppy wasn't the same guy I used to be. My other grandma died in 2004 from cancer. I can't take this anymore. My poppy died suddenly in 2005. They told us it was the flu. I have no idea how to deal with all this death. I could tell my Mima and Poppy anything, and they would help me figure stuff out. My parents divorced in 2005 in the middle of all this stuff, too. Those years were a rough time for me. I felt lost. I started smoking weed when I was 15, and that made me feel better. At least I thought it did. At first, I only smoked pot on the weekends, and then I started smoking after school, too. One day I thought, what would school be like high? Let's do it. I got caught in high school with pot in my locker. Great. My mom was going to be all over me. I need to get high to deal with this. I was now smoking pot every chance I got and added alcohol on the weekends. One day, one of my friends gave me painkillers, and that made me feel real good. I added those to my daily list of tricks, but those pills were expensive. I started stealing money, jewelry, and anything I could sell for money. My dealer told me about a drug better than oxys and a lot cheaper. As a senior in high school, I started snorting heroin. My life revolved around me getting my next fix. I very quickly developed a big habit. The high was like no other. My dealer had another great idea. If I injected it, I wouldn't spend so much. The high from injecting was unbelievable. Now I had to learn how to use a tourniquet, liquefy my heroin on a spoon, fill a syringe, and inject it. At first, I used less heroin than snorting, but that changed real fast. I didn't give a damn about my family, school, or sports. Those things were getting in the way of me getting high. Heroin became my boss and my best friend. I barely graduated high school and went to my first rehab the fall after graduation. I didn't want to be there, so I broke the rules and got thrown out. My mom is all over me, bringing me to outpatient treatment, meetings, and drug testing me at home. I don't want to stop doing heroin. Heroin is my best friend. It doesn't disappoint me. I stole everyone's jewelry, money, and even tried to forge and cash my mom's checks. I tore my family up. They didn't like me. I was a mean, lying thief that thought no one noticed what was going on. I don't give a crap about what anyone says or thinks. I just need to get high. From 2008 until 2012, I went to a few 5-day detox centers and rehabs. I stayed sober after going to Nassau County 28-day program. My mom didn't let me back home after that rehab, and I went directly to a sober house. I was sober for about 8 months. In January 2012, I really wanted to get sober. This time in rehab, it would be different. I went to Nassau County Medical Center for detox, and my mom got me into St. Christopher's in upstate in Garrison, New York. I returned home from St. Christopher's on March 13, 2012. My brother picked me up at the train station, and we had so much fun on our way home. My little brother was now 6'2" and a senior in high school. How the hell did I miss him growing up? Holy crap, I missed his whole life. I waited on the porch for my mom to get home from work. I couldn't wait to see her and talk to her about going back to school and to play on the men's lacrosse team. My mom, Andrew, and I had a great dinner, and we talked about everything. Andrew and I started teasing Mom. I haven't had so much fun with my family, and I miss them. It was such a great night, laughing and goofing around. Later that night, I couldn't sleep and I was bored. Everyone was sleeping, and I decided to go out for a little while to see my friends. I was going to the sober house in the morning and wanted to hang out. Oh, what the hell. I think I'll get high one more time before I go to the sober house. It'll be okay. Hey, what the hell? Why is Andrew leaning over me? Why is he screaming and crying? Why are the police here? I see all the neighbors out front. Oh, good, my mom is home. She'll figure it out. My mom is crying and shaking uncontrollably. The police won't let her in the house. Holy, I'm dead. What the hell did I do? The police have sealed my house as a crime scene. My family neighbors are out on the front porch. Everyone is crying. Mom, I'm right here. Please stop crying. Mom, I'm right here. Don't cry. The medical examiner is here. They're putting me in a black body bag. It's being zipped over my face. What the hell? What have I done?
You, Joe, have had the opportunity to meet Thomas. I now introduce you to one of the most incredible women I know, Thomas's mom, Linda.
Unfortunately, I have a feeling that that story sounds very familiar to too many people in this room. I was on a train on my way to the city at 7:15 in the morning when my phone rang, and my 18-year-old senior in high school, and I can go right back there right this minute because the pitch of his voice and the crying, and my brother is dead, my brother is dead, my brother is dead, and I'm on an express train to Manhattan. I got dropped off in Cold Spring Harbor, and by the time I got back home, my 18-year-old had called his wrestling coach, had called the police, had taken care of what he had to take care of. And no 18-year-old child should have had to take care of what he saw, what he had to experience, and what he had to handle. And I sat on my front porch, and literally a movie of my children's lives, especially Thomas, passed through my head, and I gave a narrative to really all my friends and family sitting there. And the overwhelming thing that I will say is, how the hell did we get here? He was 21 years old. He didn't start with heroin. And that's what I think the important message is here tonight, is he started with alcohol and he started with marijuana. And unfortunately, inside that child's brain, it was like wildfire, because substance use disorder is a brain disease. And certainly in an adolescent child, it's gonna grow roots a little too quickly. And you heard in 3 short years, we went to snorting and, injecting heroin. And he did come out and he did go to Seafield. When everyone else packed their kids up to go to college, I packed mine off to go to his first rehab. That shouldn't happen on Long Island. That shouldn't happen in the United States of America. It should not happen. What can we do now? There needs to be solutions, because unfortunately, I belong to a club that no parent should belong to, and I have to acknowledge people every day into my club. So as the holidays approach, we all live in a prison that we never get paroled from, because my son's never going to walk through that door. He's never going to sit at my table. But what can we do now, giving back to the community? So I have, along with Jeff and an awful lot of other people, we have changed laws in New York State for better treatment options, because my son was told, you need to fail at outpatient. He always had to fail before a fatal progressive disease was brought under control, because then it could not be brought under control, and he succumbed to his disease. That should never happen. Access to treatment on demand, you need to deliver that to your legislators out here, to your assemblymen, to your senators. That should be the standard of care in New York State. It should be decided by a physician, certainly not by an insurance company. Number one. But I'm going to mimic Jeff, because I love working with this lady that is such an integral part of your community. Because if we don't put the guardrail up on the cliff and people still continue to fall to their deaths, and we wonder, gee, why do they keep falling? We have to do prevention. Our children need coping skills. So as a parent, we can't be closed-minded to an evidence-based curriculum. And I know many parents feel that they don't want their children in kindergarten to hear about drugs and alcohol. They're not. They're being empowered and educated on how to handle emotions, how to handle problems that arise for little ones, little people, little problems. Give them the tools to handle their problems. You know, my family, unfortunately, you heard in Thomas's story, a lot of trauma. All 3 grandparents gone in 3 years. The rug got pulled out from under them. And I did bring them to counseling, and unfortunately, Thomas was the one that kept everything really close to the vest. And he didn't share his feelings a lot, but he had an awful lot of feelings, and he couldn't handle them. So when he started drinking or smoking pot, gee, they went away for a little while. Unfortunately, he also had substance use disorder that took his life. And this substance is unimportant. It is the disease that we have to keep our eye on. Yes, heroin and opiates gets an awful lot of attention, but it's gonna be something else one day. It was crack back 10 years ago, it's gonna be something else. Don't worry about what the drug is. Alcohol, I'll say it also, is killing way too many people. They don't drink and drive. No, they don't. But they have a whole bunch of other sorts of ways that children consume alcohol, that children use vape pens to deliver what they want delivered to their bodies. We need to, we know better. We have to do better at this point in time. No more sweeping it under the rug. I am not ashamed of my son, not one day in my life. And I have told my own community, if he, God forbid, had had a childhood cancer, I would have had a revolving door of spaghetti dinners. But my all-American boy became the scourge of the community. Don't hang out with that Ventura kid. He was the same boy as he always was, but he was kidnapped and he became who he was not. And when he was sober, he became my son. I don't miss Thomas the addict, not any 1 second of any day. And I would tell him that if he was, and I'm sure he is standing next to me. I miss my son. I miss that charismatic kid that could make you smile just by being around him. That's what we're being robbed of. We're being robbed of a generation that we don't know what they could accomplish. But they're pretty damn smart when they're using. I'll tell you that much. They're pretty damn smart and manipulative. So let's turn that around and let's see what they can accomplish. We need to listen to the children too. Our young adults are dealing with so many issues, and it's a lot of stress on them. They know what they want, they know what they need, and I'm not talking about drugs and alcohol, believe it or not. They know how to solve their own problems, and we need to give them a little leeway to bring what would work for them. I know. Are you telling me to be quiet now? Okay. I just know this, that Thomas's Hope Foundation is actually going to be joining forces with Family Children's Association, and we are doing a family program. So Thomas's Hope is going to have family coaches so that families, because when I navigated this whole disease, had no idea where to go, no idea who to speak to, and I was lost. And I used to look at my phone, and if I didn't recognize that number, oh my God, is this the phone call that I've been waiting for? But I was a single mom, and I had to show up and be a mom to 3 kids, not just the one spiraling out of control. So we're going to educate and empower other parents to hold hands with other families that are going through this insidious disease, because the family must get well, the whole family. We can't just take the one displaced person. We need to support the family. We need to bring every resource that we can to the family. And I'm going to say it again, we know better. We're the richest 2 counties in New York State, probably along with Westchester, but we know better. We have to do better. And let's hold everybody's feet to the fire. Go and storm your local legislators. You don't have to go to Albany. You can stay right in your own community and storm your school districts. This is what you want. This is what you want to happen in your school district. Let's remember who the taxpayers are. Let's remember that we have the power, not them. Hold them accountable. And if you need any help with that, I am happy to come and help you because I like to do that. No comment, Jeff. But thank you for, opening your hearts and your minds. If anybody ever needs anything, you can ask me for my phone number. I'm more than happy to help you navigate the system, or I'll sit and hold your hand while you cry because I've been where you are. I don't want you to be where I am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Linda. This is tough stuff, but we certainly have our work cut out for us. Awareness is before you can solve a problem, I guess you have to admit that you have a problem, right? And that's part of what's happening here is we as a community are beginning to understand that we do have a problem, and then working together to try to solve that problem. And certainly we've got to get to those kids. We've got to get to those kids before they start down a path that is very hard. It gets harder and harder to turn around. And that's the schools come in, and we all come into that equation, the family, the parents. And then those who are kind of down that path, we've got to get them the resources and the help they need to recover, to whether it's rehabilitation or mental health counseling, whatever it might be. And then we've also got to find a way to make these drugs less available, and that's interrupting the supply. That is law enforcement, and law enforcement is going to have a critical role, not just in interrupting the supply, but in terms of educating the community and working with those who are affected. And we're really fortunate in the town of Southampton. We have a new police chief. Stephen Skrinicki is our police chief. Yep. He's we were able to recruit him here after 40 years at Nassau County PD. He was the chief for the last 8 years of Nassau County PD. He's doing a tremendous job working with our police department. And he's also serving beyond the local community. He is a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police and a member of the Narcotics and Dangerous Drug Committee of that association. So I'd like you to please welcome our great police chief, Steve Skrinicki.
Thank you, Supervisor. And I don't want to sound like I'm kissing up to my new boss, but it was just mentioned before that you should be pushing your local legislators to do something about this, and all local legislators are doing something about this, and I think it's very worthy to give them a great round of applause. Just before I offer my comments, there are two people that I would like to introduce that are here with me from the police department, and that's Lieutenant Susan Ralph. If please stand up, Susan, and Sergeant Todd Bennett. Those of you who are local to this community recognize them as our community services leader, Sue Ralph, and our special events coordinator, that's Todd Bennett. I'd like to give you just a little bit of a overview of what's going on with the epidemic that we're talking about this evening, and then kind of scale it down a little bit to what's happening here right now on the local level. I only have 10 minutes. I'm going to try to stay to that 10 minutes, so I'm going to go kind of quick. But I want to begin with this. This is the face of heroin in the past. And if you notice, there is a gentleman there from the Middle East standing over a poppy field. There's back alley scenes of, horrific looking situations and individuals. That's not the look we're looking at today. This is today's image, and it was spoken of just a moment ago by about our area out here, out east, and the glamour and the wealth and the celebrities that are here, and some of the social conduct that goes on. That's what our kids are being influenced by right now. Very, very difficult, as many of you know, to spot people who are beginning to fall into this difficult situation. And they're certainly being encouraged, as was just mentioned, by celebrities and what we would sometimes consider to be role models. And that's just making the situation all the more difficult. So where are we right here in Southampton? The supervisor opened up the meeting with a very alarming statistic. We had 17 fatal overdoses in this relatively small community so far this year. That's represented in the highest green bar on the left side of that screen. That's compared to the same time last year of only 5. That's over 3 times. That is an extremely alarmingly increase. As you can see, as you break it down, the 17 are broken down into fentanyl deaths, opioids of various types, heroin, cocaine laced with cocaine on its own, which is relatively small, other unknowns, and other substances that are laced with fentanyl. So that's what we're faced with. And if we don't do something fast, that number is only going to keep growing. So there's an urgency to this meeting. There's an urgency to this task force. If we look at the statistics a little more in depth, you'll start to see some of the demographics of our local statistics. You can see an interesting thing there is almost every hamlet, and they're coded there, but I think you can understand the representation of those 2 letters. Almost every hamlet here in Southampton town is represented. If you look at the age groups basically run from 18 to 61, I think. So it affects everybody. And I can tell you that if we go even further into a look at Nassau and Suffolk County, that age group ranges from 18 to mid-60s. About 65% of those who have overdosed in the 2 counties are between the ages of 21 and 35. And in terms of gender, males are about just a little bit over twice as many to females. Non-fatal cases also up from last year. And as Jeff Reynolds mentioned earlier, Narcan is playing a very significant role in saving many lives. Our police department, as well as Nassau County and Suffolk County, every police officer on duty has Narcan on them. We are conducting Narcan saves daily and saving hundreds and hundreds of lives every day. A little bit of current news, and also to give you a little bit of an idea of what's happening globally. Read that first paragraph. This is coming from, it's published in the Washington Post just yesterday, I think. This is a DEA arrest. Mexican traffickers making New York a hub for the lucrative and deadly fentanyl. 141 pounds of pure fentanyl was seized. Imagine how many lives would be lost if that fentanyl hit the street. Imagine what that could do. That could kill a state, an entire state. Well, that was a very, very significant drug bust. And I'll take a moment at this point to tell you something interesting about law enforcement that you need to know in case you don't know it. As it was mentioned, I've been in this profession for over 40 years. And there's been a very significant change, and Jeff mentioned this as well. Very significant and very important change in the way law enforcement officials look at this problem. We're now looking at users, not as criminals, but as people who are in need of treatment and in need of help. And that's a very dynamic change. That doesn't mean that we're taking any less of a hard stand on those people who are trafficking drugs. We're very tenaciously and very diligently trying to stop and interrupt the flow. But a very significant change in my career is how we manage people who are addicted and who are faced with this problem. I'm going to play this very quick video if I can. I may need some assistance to just get this started. How does this begin? This just gives you a little bit of quick 2-minute video to give you a little bit of an idea.
The U.S. opioid crisis just took another dangerous turn. Last year, synthetic opioids like fentanyl surpassed heroin as the leading cause of drug overdose deaths. That's according to provisional statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC also found the number of overdose deaths caused by synthetic opioids has more than doubled from 2015. Altogether, the number of opioid overdose deaths in 2016 surpassed the number of deaths caused by the AIDS epidemic at its peak in 1995. One possible driving force behind the shift, the relative ease with which fentanyl can be produced. The base ingredient for heroin comes from the poppy flower. Fentanyl is synthetic, no crops needed. There is some good news though. Earlier this year, the CDC found that in 2015, the number of opioid prescriptions fell for the first time since the epidemic began. Oftentimes, prescription drugs act as a gateway to stronger illegal opioids like heroin. Lowering the number of prescriptions might help slow the spread of the epidemic.
That's a very brief overview, and as was mentioned by all of the preceding speakers, currently fentanyl is our biggest challenge and the most dangerous substance out there. What's around the corner? We don't know. But currently fentanyl is extremely problematic. It's dangerous to the user, obviously. It's also dangerous to medical people who are responding to overdoses. It's very dangerous to law enforcement as we try to interrupt the trafficking. But fentanyl is a extremely dangerous substance, and I'm going to offer a program at the end of my presentation to you that will help a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about how do we approach the problem. There's basically four things that the committee is focusing on. First is awareness. That's what we're doing right now tonight. We're just getting the message out that this problem is real, this problem is here in the Hamptons, and this problem is growing at rapid pace. Education, a giant piece of this, and it's been talked about already this evening. Education serves a big role, and I want to mention that the police department, as the supervisor mentioned, touches each one of these things. Enforcement, obviously, that's our greatest role. But treatment, as Jeff mentioned earlier, is another very new thing in law enforcement. As law enforcement officials, we've been recognizing, especially with Narcan, that we'll come out and we'll save people, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times. And we feel great about that. But we look at that and say, okay, we just saved this person 3 times, but how many times are we going to be back to the same person with Narcan reviving them? We have to do more than that. We have to try to connect this individual to treatment. And studies show that when we come out, law enforcement or the medical society comes out and offers somebody an invitation for treatment, it has some benefits. But when treatment reaches into them, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong here, it seems to be even more compelling for somebody to get some help. So in Nassau County, they started this when I was there, and looking to bring this out here now. But when we save somebody, we want to get in touch with some of the local treatment centers and offer that person's information to them. And there's some HIPAA issues that need to be cleaned up to do that. And then have those treatment centers reach out and say, I can help you. Let me help you. In the police department, there's 2 programs that I just want to mention are very quick. First one is Operation Medicine Cabinet. What that is we have a box for, there's programs, that same program is sometimes called Shed the Meds. You may be familiar with that term, but we have a box in headquarters here in Hampton Bays. It's there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are a number of programs throughout the year that get advertised, so you can come down and drop off meds, and we have a police officer there at every one of those events. But you should know that every single day, 24 hours a day, if you want to get rid of some medicine, you can take it down to our police station, and we'll be happy to take that off the streets and out of your homes. This program we are working on right now, and we're going to introduce this in January. No questions asked. It should really be substance testing. This is not about testing people. This is about testing substance. Within the committee, we've had some discussions already in a couple of meetings about, you're at home and you see a substance in the house and you're not so sure what this is, and you maybe have a conversation with your child. Maybe you're not so sure they're being honest with you. If you want to take a sample of that substance, bring it to the police office. We're going to offer a program where we will analyze that with anonymity, no questions asked, and get back to you and let you know what you have in your home so you can take the appropriate action. I hear all over this town, since I've been here, We know who's selling drugs. We know what's going on around here. Right there, ladies and gentlemen, write that number down. Please write that number down. If you know what's going on around here, and the short time I've been here, I do recognize one thing, it's a very close-knit community, and you do know what's going on. But I need to know, meaning we, the police department, need to know what's going on. You're in the community, you're on the streets, you're in the neighborhoods, you're in the schools. You have a much better eye view than we ever will. Write that number down. Please call us. Please give us information. Help us to disrupt the trafficking that's out here in the Hamptons. Together, we can truly make a difference. Together, we can save lives. I am so proud to be part of this committee. I'm so proud to represent the police department that's here to serve you. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Chief. I really appreciate that information. Now it is time to open this up to the audience. Have you found the information so far helpful? Yes. Okay. Now it really gets exciting because we want to hear from you in the audience. Keep your questions and comments brief. We hope to give everybody a chance to speak. After you come to the microphones located here and over on the other side in front of the audience, sign in, give us your name, your brief contact information, phone or email, and that way we can get back. If we don't have an answer for you tonight, we'll get an answer to you in the very near future. So please tell us who you are and what you would like to. Now, you can ask a question, or you can also offer a comment on what you've heard tonight. So please, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Saldivar. Thank you to the town for doing this, but I want to say that we cannot expect legislation to fix this problem. I'm glad to see our community coming out for this, but something needs to be done that hasn't been done before, and that's educate people about this, which is what you guys are doing. But we need to educate people who simply don't know about this. They need to know that addiction is a brain disease. They need to know that addiction is a family disease. They need to know that people use drugs to cope with trauma and to cope with mental health issues. We need to get young people involved in this process. With all due respect, I don't see any young people sitting behind these tables. So right now, I'm studying to become a chemical dependency counselor at Suffolk. Twice a week, I wake up at 5:45 in the morning to commute from Southampton to Brentwood. Sorry. There's a lot of talk on this crisis, but there's a lot of inaction. And if this task force is serious, you're going to bring young people to the table. Mr. Scott, I reached out to you on Facebook. You personally invited me here. I don't need to tell you, but I'm going to tell the task force right now. I'll help you bring us to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go on this side first. Go ahead. Speak up real loud.
Okay. My name is Robert Fox. I'm actually here with my wife, Francine. Coincidentally, Drew and Vivian, as you know, I spoke to you before. My son Kyle passed on September 6th of 2017, just one day prior to your beautiful granddaughter. He died of a what we thought was an opiate overdose, because Kyle was addicted to opiates, and he always felt all along that they were relatively safe because the pharmaceutical company made them. How can they be that bad? And truthfully, if you take a look at TV, and we all know there's too many ads on TV, they drive you nuts, but probably half of them are from pharmaceutical companies. I just read an article the other day about Lyrica. I don't even know who the manufacturer is, and it doesn't matter, but they spent, in 2016, they spent $300 million advertising Lyrica. What? That's true. And also, one other quick point. OxyContin was approved by the FDA in 1996. In 1999, Fortune magazine came out and asked, if heroin was banned in this country in 1924, why is it the FDA approved this drug? Yeah. And sadly, we have people all over this country whose pockets are being lined by all these large pharmaceutical companies, and The hypocrisy is beyond belief. You take a look at Orrin Hatch, $775,000 came to his campaign in 2011. His son just got hired as a spokesperson, actually as a, pardon me, what is it? They, help me out here, folks. Oh, thank you. A lobbyist. And it's just never going to end. We have to, I think the issues, I like somebody said, you start with alcohol, you start with grass. There's not one kid who I know who's 15 or 16 who's going to stick a needle in their arms. They're going to start with the opiates, and they are so freaking addictive. My son said to me before he passed, Dad, you have no idea the hook it put in my brain. I can't stop. He's been through Seafield. I brought him for 6 months every single day to outpatient. You know, he's gone. And I'm frustrated and I'm angry. And I love the optimism here, but the truth of the matter is you have to cut the snake's head off. And it deals with more than just some of the local issues. The politicians could say all they want. None of them fund anything. They go up, they sign bills. None of them are ever funded. So what gets changed? Nothing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox's son, his name was Kyle, a beautiful individual. We miss him. Please, step right up. Give us your name.
My name is Jack Cirilli. Is that close enough? Okay. Yeah, so I am the Montauk Moth. I started a harm reduction program out here. It's a harm reduction coalition out here in Eastern Long Island. I am not Long Island, I am Strong Island. Okay, I'm a former addict. I'm a convicted felon for DWIs because I didn't get caught with everything else. And so I know where everybody's at right now. What we do is we meet addiction where it's at, okay? We meet the addict where they are at in their recovery. We don't care what state of recovery they want to be in. Our hand never goes out fully extended. We meet them halfway. They got to reach up and just say, give me some help, okay? And that's what we do. It's a national program. We are the New York division. We're in Bronx. We're in cities all over we're all over New York State. But I'm the only guy out here starting something up out here.
If we need to reach you, how can we reach you?
Montauk Moth is I just bought, I just started this thing. I just came back to Long Island. It's a long story. So I just launched this thing 2 months ago. It's the Montauk Moth, M-O-T-H, Harm Reduction Coalition. Okay, if you look us up on Facebook, we have weekly meetings out here in Southampton. Pardon the language, but you know what? You kicked my ass.
Thank you. Yes, please. Give us your name, how we can contact you.
Hi, my name is Marie Guerrero-Tucker. I just want to pray to God for all the parents that have suffered through this endeavor. I hope that you heal, and what you're doing is wonderful being part of this. For over 20 years, I helped the underprivileged in this community. At one point before my property value went up, I had the support and help from Southampton officials. Behind the scenes, I could not understand for the life of me why we had such an issue with drug abuse. It wasn't until I had one of the largest drug dealers on my property and the town police would not help. I called everyone. When I realized the police were protecting this drug dealer, I knew my family was in danger, so I departed ways with this person so the streets would not seek revenge. Since then, my property was a target of drugs and prostitution, and if I would say anything, the police would protect them and hurt my family. On 2 separate occasions, I was falsely arrested and told I should have kept my mouth shut. One of the drug dealers and the drug addicts broke the window in my own home, and Sergeant Ralph put a single mother in jail for my own broken window, protecting the drug dealer. I have been terrorized by the town for over 20 years while they protected the criminals, and my children and I were under siege forever. They destroyed my property, killed my pony and duck, and took my freedom twice because I was a whistleblower. I begged and pleaded the town to help, and I was considered crazy. The people they protected were connected to your former councilman, who we all now know went to jail for selling Oxycontins. We all know that the Southampton Town Police protected and lied about a police officer who was an addict. What the everyday people except the streets do not know is Southampton was part of the problem and created the epidemic in this town for decades. So as we now know, the Suffolk County DA was indicted and also protected the criminals. The more I begged, pleaded, the more risk I was with my children. Being a whistleblower, my life was in danger, and everyone knew it in the town and did nothing except cause my family harm. A month ago, I filed a 1983 civil rights lawsuit against the town that has not been served yet. How can you sit here today and be a leader in an epidemic that you caused? A solution: get rid of the corrupt players in Southampton who are part of the Suffolk crime family. Provide restitution to all the families who suffered in the hands of your corruption, and compensate the ones who are disabled because of negligence on the town part. Then when you drain the evildoers from their power to destroy the youth of this community, predominantly the African Americans, and stop your racism, then you could begin to heal the wrongdoing. There is no African Americans or minorities on this panel, and no youth. I was told that I will never get help in Southampton because I help the Black community. Well, I chose to be terrorized by town officials and still help the underprivileged anyway. More importantly, the solution is giving our youth a safe haven to play. Be part of something. Bring them hope again so they can see through action that Southampton is changing their evil ways and really want to help. Our youth need a recreation center to play basketball and swim, work on cars, play the piano, etc. Everything and anything to keep them busy. Options are what they need, not a corrupt, bullying public official. They need their constitutional rights restored, and then only then will they get their faith back in the system and have hope again. Now, I wave the white flag and bring an olive branch to forgive and settle my dispute with Southampton, and will offer my property to build a youth program and save our children once and for all. If Southampton wasn't part of the problem, this project would have been built already, and we would have had put a great impact on the tragic that plagued Suffolk County, destroying families and killing our youth. Please talk it over. Settle with me before I start publicly educating our town with the truth. Now, sir, with all due respect, you are the new chief, so I do not hold you accountable. And what you had to say, I'm very proud of you. And I believe in my heart that God is here, and he is bringing forth good people. And to all the ones who've done wrong, say you're sorry, get it over with, and start protecting our children.
All right, Marie, Chief Skrynicki will be glad to talk to you afterwards. Okay? Thank you. Please,
Good evening. My name is Lisa.
step a little closer to the mic. Thanks.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Lisa Logan. I'm an attorney. I'm a professional. And I unfortunately have had the misfortune of having a 30-year-old son who was all county, same as what you went through. The model, if you Googled him, you'd see he was a model. And he is alive, but he had it almost killed, broken neck, shattered pelvis. And he was DWI. I don't agree with it. I'm a straight edge. I've never smoked. I never drank. I never did drugs. I never even smoked a cigarette in my life. So it's hard for me to relate to it. But I can tell you that the programs that you have, where we've built in Yaphank, the DWI buildings, 9 months, a family member served. Not one person got any course, lecture, or anything about DWI. My son was in Seafield. My son was in South Oaks. I got billed. I have the best insurance. My husband was a government worker with Suffolk County for 40 years. And my husband, we have an empire, as most of you do. And not one, I got billed $42,000 at Seafield, and I got billed for the explanation of benefits for South Oaks, but he never had one-on-one counseling. Nobody ever asked him, Mike, what do you think? What's troubling you, Michael? He sat in a room for group meetings where they showed a movie and then the counselors walked out. He sat before counselors who he partied with at Hofstra, who were his counselors, until I called Gene Jackson and said, what's going on here? How can you have somebody hypocritical telling my son not to drink when she herself goes out on the weekends and parties? I'm speaking the truth. It's time that our legislature, and if I have to go the whole way up the ladder, I went to an Ivy League school. I graduated with honors. I'm not here to cause this disturbance. Listen, when people say things, don't shake your head and be annoyed. Listen to what they're saying. They're coming from an informed perspective, and they're right. Where are the youth? Where are the 20s to the 30s? The kids that are in the rehab right now at South Oaks are 12 years old. Heroin addicts. Their parents were heroin addicts. They're out on the streets. They were kicked out of their house. They went into the rehabs. You know why? Because they're homeless. What do you think's going to happen? We need to come out of our ivy towers and we need to listen. You need to do undercover. Everybody goes to your dog and pony shows and they show how wonderful your buildings are and how wonderful your programs are. But the truth of the matter is, it's only for the politicians and for you people who sit on your boards. I sit on boards too. I know anybody can do a good dog and pony show. But the truth is, if you went undercover, if you went with civilians, you'd see the real McCoy, what's really happening when somebody that's an addict goes in and asks, can I have a nicotine patch? And they get dismissed as if they're trash. People, this is not the way to go. You know, we need to really listen and we really need to come up with some real alternatives. And the real alternatives are, stop saying we have programs. We don't. Monday, my son is sitting in Yaphank. Why? Because I got an order of protection. You talk about a PINS protection? I got an order of protection to keep him from refraining from alcohol. And guess what? He called the police. I live on waterfront property in East Mauritius. I pay $27,000 a year in taxes. It's $1 million house. I'm not saying this to brag and boast, but I'm saying it because I called every single one of the lists that's listed on the website. Nobody would take the insurance. No one. And I have insurance. If I had Medicaid, he'd be accepted, but I don't. So I called many places. I called Hope House, spoke to the father, 3 to 6 month wait. I am getting him into Teen Challenge. You know why? Because I support Teen Challenge. But I'm just here to tell you, you have a lot of programs that you list on the website. They're useless. You can't get You get them on the phone, they'll refer you to someone else. And you know who you get referred to? Private pays. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of people don't have $22,000 to $42,000 to $52,000 for 28 days. They don't. Thank you.
Might any of our panel want to comment on that statement? Okay, please.
Hi, my name is Barbara Wilson. I'm one of the judges in the Southampton Town and Village Court. I don't run a dog and pony show in my court. I offer drug court to people. If people want it and they're eligible, they will get into drug court. So that's one of the solutions that you have here. I'm sorry that you think it's not a solution.
I know for a fact it's not. It's not a legitimate solution. It is not a legitimate.
Has your son been through drug court?
My son has been through drug court. He's been to task. He's been to rehab. I've been through it.
Well, and I do have a clue, ma'am. My sister's dead. She's a heroin addict. So I have a clue.
With due respect, you don't, because I know Ed who runs a drug court in Central Islip. My father-in-law was the deputy county clerk, George Logan, in the 60s.
Ma'am, I'm not going to say that everyone passes drug court. Some people fail drug court. As you heard today, there's another thing called relapse, and we have to deal with it. And we have to be willing to give people second and third and fourth chances. I'm not being arrogant, ma'am. No, I'm not. No, ma'am, I'm trying to tell people here that don't know that we have a drug court here in the town of Southampton.
It's ineffective.
Judge Wilson
Well,
and the woman
I
speaking.
disagree with you,
We
but
could go
thank
back
you.
and forth all night. And I think you said you're from East Mauritius too, so you might have used a different drug court than Southampton Town. I'm not sure that's the same drug court. Was your son in Southampton drug court or in Brookhaven drug court?
My son was in Central Islip.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what
Okay.
drug court.
So we have a lot of people, and I don't want to interrupt you, but we do have a lot of people who are waiting to speak. So, okay, thank you.
And I do encourage everyone to please give it a try. I'm sorry it didn't work for your son, ma'am, but it is an option, and it's something that people need to know about. And if they want more information, they can certainly come down to the court and get it. Thank you very much.
I want to say, this is a judgment-free zone here, okay? You can say, excuse me, if you don't mind. Okay, so this is a judgment-free zone. We're not going to jump in and respond to everything, whether we think it's true or false. We want to listen and give everybody a chance to be heard. If one of our panelists has expertise in an area that wants to weigh in on something, and I see Alfredo Murat from our panel does want to offer a comment here, and then we'll go right back. I think we're to my left will be the next speaker.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Alfredo. I'm a member of the community. I'm a father of 2 children. I'm in this panel trying to find solutions. I'm here because I know everybody's hurting, and every time someone dies, I feel like some part of me is dying as well, because my kid could be that child as well. So that's why I joined this group. We have youngsters who are actually very active in the community, and you don't even know they exist. They are working with Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. It is free. It doesn't cost anything, but your child has to want the help. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using whatever they're using. All you have to do is look at the list of Narcotics Anonymous online. If it says open meeting, come, sit with us. Sit with them. It doesn't cost $20,000, $40,000, it doesn't cost anything. It's just you are more than welcome. We have those 20-year-olds, by the way, and yes, we should have them with us. We had them at the last meeting, and I'm hopeful they'll come back to tell us how they do it and share with you what works. And believe me, it saves lives. And they go to Phoenix House and share meetings, and then they're just making the hope for others who are seeing them finding a new way to live without drugs and alcohol and so many other substances that we don't even know. So I'm here saying that we're trying to find solutions. Let's try to focus on solutions.
Okay, thank you, Alfredo.
Hi.
Alfredo, you want to lift that mic up for him?
Yeah, maybe we need to.
Oh, he's got, okay.
Is that better? Oh,
Yeah.
that's better. My name is Father Constantine Lazarakis. I'm here from the Greek Orthodox Church in Southampton. One of the things I want to say about the exchange that just happened is I think that two really profoundly important things are happening right now. One, I think that you folks are coming forward saying, hey, we need to do more. We need to do better. We need to work harder. And I think that effort is to be commended. And folks out here, some of them have been wounded, killed, destroyed by this epidemic. And nobody wants to see another dog and pony show. Not to say that this is, just to say that that's a lot of what we do. We're going to deal with this, we're going to deal with this, we're going to deal with this. We get pictures, we get articles, and then we go about business as usual. So what I want to say to everyone in the room is what we have to do is love one another as a community. And what I want to say to the panel, just in terms of the exchange that just happened, our responsibility as a community is to go further and better than we've done. Not to say that what we haven't done, that what we have already done is useful and sincere and has helped a lot of people. But no matter how good we've been, we're here because we know we got to do better. Now to what I came up here to say in the first place, I just have a small suggestion, and Kim, you hinted at it when you spoke before. I think that one of the things that this task force and we as a community really have to do is we need to have a very aggressive communication and training campaign for parents. I'm sorry, but a lot of what we're doing tonight is we're preaching to the choir because we're here because we want to deal with it. But parents who don't identify these problems in their home, sometimes the most trained, the most sensitive parents still don't identify, and it could get by me. It got by my parents, to be honest. But, the moms who are doing 3 martinis before pickup at Bobby Van's, they don't want to hear this. The moms who are buying kegs for their juniors and seniors in high school and having the friends over because it's safer to have them at the house than it is to let them drive, they don't want to hear this. I have 2 10-year-olds and I have an 8-year-old. And I'm like, as I'm talking to them about this, there's a little voice inside of me saying, oh, don't spoil their innocence. Don't tell them about this. They don't need to know about this yet. So even I have a resistance to it. So one of the things we do have to do is break out of this room and have a very aggressive communication campaign through the town, through the village, through the school, through the churches. I know that the Greek Orthodox Church has already met with members of the task force saying, we'll do anything, we'll put all our resources in it. But we need to shake up parents and say, pay attention now, pay attention early. Don't be afraid to confront your kids. Don't be afraid to act. And more importantly, get the own drug and alcohol problems of your own. Address those issues because you can't address them with your kids if you haven't addressed them yourself. We got parents who are out snorting cocaine all summer long and drinking all afternoon through the winter months. And we need to challenge, it's a cultural norm on the East End, and we need to challenge it among the parents. We got to do it aggressively. That's my only suggestion.
Thank you, Father. And again, nothing anyone says is wrong tonight. Say whatever you feel like saying. This is part of the learning process. Not only will the answer come from the community, but the answer to this probably will be the community. So it's really, this will be part of the solution. I don't know why the mic is popping. All right, we're going to go to this gentleman over here.
How you doing? My name is George Babcock, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And everything I say is my opinion, not that of AA or NA, but I got some experience in those fields, and I'd like to offer some hope to the parents and people that are struggling today. That you know, I spent about 17 years of my life in starting, you know, in detoxes, rehabs, TCs, jail. I used to time going to jail, so I was there in the winter so I could spend the summers out in the Hamptons, you know. And the last time I had a task force near me, they were chasing me. That's a joke. So, but there's hope because on March 26, 2013, that's my sober date. I surrendered, and it took everything I did for the 45 years of my life to get where I am today. And there was hope offered to me in all the institutions I went to, including jail and prison, Seafield, LICR. I've been to a lot of places, and you know, what I can tell you is that until a person is ready, they're not going to do anything. And the fellowships are not for people that want it or need it. They're for people who do it. And which means put in the footwork. And I invite the parents and anybody who feels they need to go to a meeting to come to a meeting and just listen and find out what it's all about. And I have a great life today because I surrendered. And you know, they told me to surrender to win, and that's what I've done. So I really appreciate what the community is doing. This is my hometown. I went to this school. It wasn't this big when I was here, but I was in this school, and I got thrown out of this school because I was a behavioral problem. But you know, it was, you know, the problem was inside of me. The drugs and alcohol are really a symptom of what's wrong with us. And today I learn a little bit more about myself each day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll switch to the other aisle.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Sapala. I go by Jane. I'm glad I'm here tonight. And I just want to ask everybody, do we know who we are? Do we know what we are about? How do we help our children if we don't understand that this is a disease? This is a genetic predisposed disease. We are the result of many, many loves, as are our children. That means a lot of genes, okay? And it's the potluck of the genes that what each person is facing. And when your drug of choice comes along, and do we know what homeostasis is? Do we have any idea? That's a sense of well-being. When your drug of choice comes along and you feel whole, that's it. That's where you're staying. How long are we going to wait before we get education into those classrooms to teach these kids about genes, what genes are, why you may have red hair and your brother has black hair, or why you have blue eyes, or what's going on, your genetic background, your parents, everybody's an addict in a different sense. Everybody. Do you know that alcohol is one molecule different than ether? What are we doing? One molecule. And then we sit here as a society and say it's okay to legalize marijuana. We're going to be stupid too. And then you said, tell that kid they can drive a car. We have nobody to blame but ourselves. We let a government, we manufacture this drug, manufacture opiates, and doctors prescribe them at their will. Are we out of our minds? Stand up. We need a revolution here. We need these treatment centers. We need to know the basis of this disease. This is a genetically predisposed disease. I went in front of a school district here in 1983 and told them this. I went into an attention deficit group, support group, and I got them to bring a 12-step program in the other room for the parents. Let's get into reality here. It's a lot more clear-cut and simple than we think. Do we know what disease is? Guess what? Disease, D-I-S, space, ease. That means dis-ease of the body. That's what disease is. Hello? You know what doctors are? They're practicing. We have to take this upon ourselves to break the chain of this disease. We need to go after the government who's manufacturing this drug. The answer is to make a drug that's equivalent out in the street is heroin. What? That means when you can't get your drug anymore and you're addicted because it's so addictive that in order to replace it, you have to get heroin. What? Where am I? What is this? Start a revolution. Thank you.
All right, Misha. Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put it. Oh, we got a whole mic here. Okay, great. All right, you got it. It's cool. Is it gonna fall? All right, got it. Hi, my name is Misha Johnson. And I'm actually glad to be here. I've heard some really good points, and just a little bit of background about myself. I am pursuing my master's degree in social work right now, but while I got my bachelor's in psychology, I also did the coursework for my CASAC. So I was able to do my internship at Phoenix House, and I actually learned a lot. And I also want to say and mention that I am from Shinnecock. So a couple of points I want to bring up too is that, you know, and I believe it was mentioned previously, is that there's nobody like me here. You know, there's rarely no people of color. I'm also a mother of a 16-year-old, and fortunate enough that as I'm studying my coursework and, you know, reading through the DSM-5 and the 13, my daughter had to read it with me. You know, she had to help me. So, you know, the conversations about alcohol abuse and what true addiction truly is and the difference between addiction and substance abuse disorder, we had those conversations. And so, you know, even she tells me now that she wants to be an addictions counselor. And, you know, the one thing I want to talk about is, you know, why aren't there people like us here? I mean, I'm glad to see that Reverend Mike is here, but, you know, still, we need to have young people here. We need to open up the doors of communication with our young people. And what is addiction? How is addiction defined by the APA? You know, what are the different criteria that determine when and if somebody has an addiction? You know, these are the different conversations that, fortunate enough, that I was able to have and with my 16-year-old. And, you know, even throughout the county, I'm actually working with Councilwoman Valerie Cartwright in the town of Brookhaven right now. We're in the process of starting our own drug task force there. And so they've asked me to be an integral part of that. But, you know, unfortunately, I sit on the town of Southampton's anti-bias task force, and they all know that I do that, and nobody reached out to me, which is, you know, kind of unfortunate. I've reached out to legislator Sarah Anker for the county-wide drug task force that she's a part of, and she has sent me emails about, you know, being a part of that drug task force. But, you know, it doesn't help if nobody wants to reach out. And, you know, I think that that's where the disconnect is. If you have people in your communities that are willing to give the help, you know, why aren't you reaching out to them? Why don't you have like an email listserv where, you know, you say we're having these meetings? And, you know, I'm here because I want to be a resource to my Native American community. You know, we just had a number of overdoses in our community, and it shouldn't take for a town of Southampton or the county to say, oh, we're going to start a drug task force, because we've been dealing with addiction for decades. You know, it's, you know, unfortunate that now that it's starting to impact people of a different culture or that look different than us, that now we have to jump on the bandwagon and be able to access some of these resources. So, I'm here just to say that, I'm here. I want to be a part of this. And I think that there needs to be more people other than us here, like our young people. Let's talk to them. Let's talk about what addiction is. How does it start? And if again, Jay, you know me, and I would appreciate if somebody from the town would reach out to me and ask for my assistance. Thank you.
You got it. All right, the gentleman to my left.
Yes, my name is Tom Cregan. I'm former law enforcement. A week ago in the Newsday, there was an article where some rocket scientists from law enforcement came out and said that they found some bodies, okay, from the MS-13 gang in Nassau County. And they said that they were going to go to the family, and they had gone to the family to pick up former cell phones of the deceased. And as a result of pulling the records on the cell phones, they knew who killed the person, or at least who the last person they contacted was. And they were going after that person. Now, as I said, what rocket scientist tells the defendant, I'm coming after you because I found your telephone number in the pocket or in the cell phone of the dead person? I don't know. But in the same vein, what I see as a problem out here is communication with the community. And that is, if the task force, if the powers to be, okay, are doing things such as itemizing, finding out where there's problems in the community, maybe there should be something publicized saying that we are aware of the area. You don't have to mention names. You don't have to mention the cell phones of the people that you're looking at, but at least let the people know that we are aware of this problem in this specific area, and we are going to approach all efforts to satisfy or rectify that problem. But right now, there's nothing in the paper about the police department or anybody coming out and saying we have problems. We know what the problems are. We are going to attach them, no matter what area it is. But at least the people who come here might have an answer to say, hey, if I speak to one of the representatives that are up here, they say we are aware of that. And if they turn out and say they use the school district, okay, as a source of beginning, saying that some of the MS-13 members, if they are out here, are in the school, we are aware of them, we are keeping our eye on them, we are looking for their friends, we are seeing where they travel back and forth from, whatever it might be. There's a communication where the task force can communicate based upon information from the school or based upon people calling up and having the people aware of the fact, listen, you put in the paper that my community is a target. Well, I want to let you know what I see, and as a result, maybe it will help you. But right now, I do not know of any publication that's out there that lets the people in the community know we know where the problems are and we're coming after them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me allow our police chief a brief response.
I just want to, if I can just have your attention, first of all, I thank you for your service in law enforcement, and I just want to assure you that some of the very things that you were a little, probably rightfully critical about, and you used the term rocket scientist for disclosing some of the techniques used. I don't want to speak about some of the techniques we're using because I'm not going to be one of the rocket scientists, but I can assure you, I'm a new chief in this town. We have a lot of techniques in place now that I do not want to disclose right now, but I will take the opportunity, as I said a moment ago, to invite everyone in this room. As you correctly say, there's information here, a lot of information. We want to work together. I need the information. I can't do anything with the information you keep to yourself. So please, I put the number up on the board. There's officers in the room right now. If you have some information, share it with us. You can remain anonymous. We're working on some very significant cases in this town right now, and you will see some good results very soon. I promise you that.
Thank you, Chief. You know, and I'm just a real brief comment on the issues of including people, inclusivity, whether it's minorities or young people, recovering addicts. This is a big circle, and this committee has only just started. We started literally a month ago, and the very first thing we decided to do was put together this forum. There's a lot of work that went into this forum so we could invite the community in. So in a way, tonight, you are all part of this task force. And it's probably not going to be the last one, because I already see lines of people wanting to be heard, and we want to listen. Some people I know are going to have to leave fairly soon. They have commitments. But we're probably going to have to do another one of these, maybe in the springtime, so that we can reach out one more time, and hopefully we'll get as much participation as we did tonight. We're going to go to this side of the room.
Hi, my name is Michelle Johnson. I'm Misha's mom, and I also live on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation. And we did lose a lot of young men to drug overdose. And I just want to know, to the police officer, what is the consequence? What kind of relationship have you established with our leadership so that we can address the drug trafficking on the Indian Reservation? It's not a secret. Every community has drug dealers, but it seems that because we live on the Indian Reservation and we're sovereign, people can just do what they want. It's okay.
I'd love to respond to that. The reservation is a very interesting dynamic here. It's a very, very closed and very tight community, as you well know. But there are representatives on the committee, and the young lady behind you just offered to offer her services as well. I am very anxious to work with you to penetrate some of that cone of silence that exists on the reservation. And if you're willing to help us do that, I want to talk to you. I'll talk to you right after this meeting.
Okay, well, I'm just going to let you know that we would be deemed as whistleblowers because, Shinnecock is very, like you said, a private community. And, I want to be protected. I don't want to just, point this one out and that one out, because we all know who sells drugs on our reservation.
There's ways.
And we watch people die and drop like flies.
And protect you, and I understand that situation. I understand that dynamic very well. But there's ways we can work together. And I think we'll have an off sidebar conversation, and love to work with you.
And I also wanted to address the point where you said you're going to view users as people who are in need rather than as criminals. But 9 times out of 10, those people are criminals. They go into your house, they steal your stuff.
The crimes they commit to supply
because of the disease that they have.
Needs are, that's a little bit that we can't overlook that, obviously.
Right, I'm not suggesting
but
that
under that, we know that there's a person who has a real serious problem. They're the
Absolutely.
sons and daughters and maybe some people in this very room who are seriously ill and need help. That's what I meant by that.
Okay.
We're not overlooking crimes that may be committed by those people.
Okay, I just want to see the equality across the board for everybody.
Please see me after the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. We'll switch to my left.
Hi, my name is Kathleen McCabe. I am in recovery. My friends call me Kat. I am not so anonymous. I do belong to a 12-step program, but I personally can't afford to be hiding in a church basement. This problem is huge. It's bigger than all of us, and thank you everyone for coming out. I'm glad to see that the community came out and that the task force, I was like, oh my God, there's as many of you guys as there is of us back here. Thank you all for being part of the solution. I run a little group called Simpatico Girls, and it is about empowerment of young ladies. And I'm speaking to some teachers now, trying to, I don't know how to do this, so I'm asking teachers who are in the schools who do know how to do it to help me. Kim, I would be very interested in talking to you about hugs. I got a lot to say. I always do, but I've got a passion. I became a widow at 47 years old. My husband died of a drug overdose. For everyone that's lost someone, I would imagine everyone in this room has been affected very adversely or knows someone who has died because of drugs. You know what, I'm going to start rambling. I said what I needed to say. I am glad to be part of this community. You know, I want to act locally and think globally. This is my little corner of the universe, and thank you everyone for helping keep my little corner of the universe cool, you know? Thanks. That's all.
All right, so we have 5 remaining speakers. I would ask that no additional speakers other than these 5 will stay and listen to what the 5 of you have to say, and then we'll probably have to schedule, I hate this popping mic, but we'll probably have to schedule another one of these so we can get additional comments as well. But if everybody could be as brief as possible.
Hi, my name is Patty. I live in Hampton Bays. I just first of all want to thank everybody for coming out because this is so needed. You said maybe in the spring we would come together again. I think it has to happen sooner than that. I raised my 2 children in Hampton Bays. Great community. It takes a village. We all looked out for one another's children. We knew where they were. They weren't always doing the right thing, but we knew where they were and we knew where to get them. So I think my theory is, which I had to go through, is you never, ever give up. My heart goes out to you. I hear what you say. And my condolences, because I know what you went through. And my theory is you just keep on throwing stuff at the wall until something sticks. They're not criminals, but it is a disease of thinking, and it starts very young. Peer pressure, family problems, what kids are going through today. It's not like it was when I was growing up. It was acceptable to drink. It was a weekend thing. Now it's starting way too early. I know kids that went to Hampton Bays that did not come out of this school not addicted to heroin. They were addicted to heroin. It was a problem 20 years ago. They're dying left and right. We need help. And I believe, you know, there's a buddy system. Somebody coming out of recovery, whether it be a sober house, whether it be a rehab, whether it be a detox, get a sober buddy for that person. Give back to the community. Help that person with their struggles, because it's a day-to-day struggle. If you stay clean for that day, it's a miracle. If you've got disease of alcoholics or drug addiction. My other thing is, I just lost my train of thought. It was good though. I did the 80s.
Save it for later next year.
No, but I plead with you. Don't wait till springtime, because this is, oh, that was my, I don't know if anybody on this committee has ever gone to a 12-step program, not 12-step to get somebody into recovery, to get them into treatment. It is horrendous. You spend hours, you spend days trying to get that person the help they need, only to get rejected, to say they don't meet the criteria. They're not stoned enough. They're not drunk enough. So what do? They go out and use. Sometimes they don't make it back to that hospital. So anybody on this committee that would like to go on a 12-step call and face those hospitals and see what goes on there, it's horrendous. Insurance companies are becoming doctors. It needs to stop. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Dr. Cannon? Oh, I think so. Just go right
I
into
wanted
it.
to share, I'm listening tonight, that we have part of
Speak
the
closer
solution
to it.
here.
Get closer to
We
mine.
have part of the solution here in Southampton, and no one in this room probably knows it, but I think the last speaker really brought it to my attention. I have 10 residents and medical students tonight at AA.
because in medicine, they don't teach us. And so you're part of a very fortunate community that our little hospital here has 84 residents now. And Dr. Van Arsdale, the family practitioner program director, and I'm an internist. We're part of the solution. We're one of the only places in the United States that mandates addiction education as part of the training program. So I wanted you guys to feel proud of your community, that you are actually part of the solution. And your little community hospital is working very hard on the issue of addiction, and we send our residents to Seafield so they can have an educational experience. And it's the only way they're going to learn. When we do it at Southampton, and we often bring in people from AA and NA, they're horrified to hear that our accrediting bodies have 0 mandated hours in addiction education. And we send our residents for a minimum of a month to an addiction facility to live it, feel it, and understand it as a disease. So you are part of the solution, and this town is part of the solution. So be proud of yourselves. Don't beat each other up. This is day one. And I know there's lots of young people involved in this community that are a part of this, and it's happening. So everyone here should be proud of themselves. And to give some light on, your little hospital is the most progressive in addiction education in the United States of America. And we're doing something to help address this problem. I personally have spoken at the accrediting body to say we need to educate physicians, and I will share with you, I was told to sit down, Dr. Cannon, we're not changing the curriculum. Well, it has to start somewhere, and it starts by forums like this. So congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. And Southampton Hospital has been playing a major role in this task force with a number of individuals participating. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Jenkins, and I don't have much to say, but I know there's a lot of frustration within the room. And I've been hearing a lot about yourselves, but this is about coming together as a community and as a species. And all I'd really like to say is what I've learned from my experiences, creating a toxic environment filled with anger won't solve anything. Love one another and support one another. Create an environment filled with love and positivity, and that's the first step.
Thank you. Thank you, Mackenzie. We'll go here.
Hi, I'm Paulette Philippi, and I lost my grandson 15 years, well, he was 15 years old 7 years ago. And the first 4 years, I tried to reach out to people and explain and educate. And I did it basically with my family. And then I found out about, through Nancy Beckett Lawless, that there was a bus that was going to Albany. And it was a Mother's Day bus. And they asked me to go along. And I went to Albany to help fight. And I went with Linda and Jeff Reynolds and Anthony Rizzuto, and we spoke to the representatives there and told our stories about losing our loved ones. I'll never forget Linda's story there, but I'll try and keep it short. What I really want to say is I got involved and became part of FIST, which is Families in Supportive Treatment. I learned what it's like to realize that it is a disease, and it's okay to talk about the fact that my family has this disease, and it isn't just the person that has the substance use disorder, it's the whole family. And we really all need to work on ourselves. So I put the focus on myself and what I need to do for me. And I've surrounded myself with healthy people in FIST, and I've learned about Thrive, where Lyra, LICAD, families and children and families in supportive treatment came together, and they went to Oasis, and they were granted this grant to open Thrive, which is in Hapog, and it is a wonderful place for the families to go. It's the next step after like sober homes, where people actually learn how to do resumes. Even if they've come out of jail, they learn how to mainstream into the, into getting jobs, how to really, and I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but there's just so many wonderful things that's happening. One story about Thrive, and then I promise I'll wrap it up. I love doing arts and crafts. And so we've been going there, and some of the people from the sober homes will come there. And this one woman said, I have had so much fun. I wasn't able to do this as a child. And this is what it's all about. All of us coming together and caring about one another and having a safe place to come and not going into the bad environment that was unhealthy. And just like the last girl spoke, it's all about really putting the focus on ourselves and spreading that love and care, and what we've heard today, and to bring it to others. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Dory Cohen. I am from Riverhead, and I am in recovery on the family side in Al-Anon. My son was an addict, and I have a success story, actually. He went into treatment, but it was long-term treatment, and today he's a police lieutenant fighting the Mexican cartel, actually. He's teaching at the academy in New Jersey. And I'm here actually to bring into more focus the organizations that have come together to create Thrive and the new recovery center in Islandia. And everything Paulette said, if it wasn't for Paulette, I would not be in FIST myself because I would sit home and hear the news about all these young people dying. And I says, what could I do? And sure enough, I run into her path and she tells me about FIST, and you know what? I enlisted. Anybody can enlist. And if you really want to help, find out what programs there are, what resources there are, and get in and put in your best to try and help. Because as a result of communities coming together and the organizations coming together, that's how Thrive was created. And before I knew it, I enlisted, and I'm on a bus going up to Albany. And we're making a difference. From what I hear, 11 bills were passed since 2013. And I was so glad to see Jeffrey Reynolds and Kim on the task force, because I'm saying, we got to get out east. And here you are. The door's open. And you know what? Riverhead is next. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Cynthia. I'd like to thank you all for being here and doing this. This is now finally right in my backyard. I too, member of FIST, and I think that was, from my own experience, my biggest challenge was getting treatment for my son, facing that, well, they have to fail out at outpatient. They needed to be on death's door before somebody would say, yeah, they need to be somewhere. And I fought and fought and fought and fought. Interesting enough, I just want to share this. I recently received a class action for the health insurance that I had. Family started in California, and their daughter was denied treatment because she didn't meet the criteria. And they started this large class action against one of the major insurance companies. And my son may fall into that period, unbeknown to me at the time. But that was the biggest challenge. And I think somebody said it best tonight, that we need to get that treatment, part of it, in right away. And I think one of the most important things I've heard said here tonight was that we need, and Dr. Reynolds, thank you for saying it over and over again, we need to get rid of this stigma. I have come out now and said, my son was an addict, is an addict. He is in recovery though, gratefully. But I would go to work, and thank you, Mr. Scott, thank you for doing this. You're such a big voice. You were such a big person on Channel 12. And younger people, we need to get the younger people out here, because they are no longer saying, I'm anonymous. They're saying who they are, where they live, what happened to them. They're shouting it from the rooftops. I see one group on Long Island in Massapequa. They are screaming what this is about. They've come out on the other side. They want to help. They want to help the parents. And the biggest thing that I give back now for me is I tell parents and families and loved ones and husbands, wives, boyfriends, whatever you are, get educated. Because when I was going through this in my worst time, I had more questions than I had answers. And people said to me, go to a meeting, get to a meeting, pray, do this, reach out to LICAD, do this. So I soaked it all up. I read everything that everybody told me. I went to those meetings. I went to the agencies on Long Island. That saved me. Knowledge is power. And today, I am grateful to say that I'm able to give that knowledge to others. It's no longer where you can have to hide, and you can't talk about it at work, because what are people going to think? Everybody is going through this. If it isn't right in your house, it's next door, across the street, down the block. And we need to be able to say, this is not a shameful thing. This is a disease, a chronic relapsing condition. Relapse is not a moral failing. They need to dust themselves off and pick themselves up, and so do we. So I don't feel like I did that first time I walked into an Al-Anon meeting, and it was so brutally honest. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this isn't my life. And I wanted to slither out the back door until I finally opened my mind and I listened to what other people who had been there were telling me. And I went to open meetings. Go to an open NA meeting. AA, if you've never been, sobering experience doesn't even scratch the surface. What these people, and they're amazing groups. The camaraderie that they have, the fellowship that they have is amazing. And I thank you all for being here and listening and staying and doing this. But we just need to keep the conversation going and going and going. And yes, get on a bus and go to Albany. Thank you.
Look out, Fred, they're coming to your office soon. He's looking forward to seeing you, actually. Well, I want to thank you for your participation tonight, and big thanks to Connie Conway here, right here. Stand up, Connie. She's Chief of Staff for the Supervisor's Office, and put all of this together along with the task force. So we thank you, Connie. Thanks to the Hampton Bay School District, Lars Clemenson, Anna Rojas, and the technical staff here, and the students that helped us as well. They participated.